Today is March 17, 2023. It is an exploration of the Holy Text with an Afro-centric um, perspective. Today, I will be considering Genesis chapter 20 and chapter 21. These verses, it was very important to put them together because I'll go with 20 itself, and chapter 20 altogether, I would say it could be written off. It could be a story that we can just ignore, and I'll tell why. And I got this perspective from someone who was really versed into considering these scriptures. Chapter 20, now, Abraham, we've seen Lot, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, but Abraham was prosperous wherever he was. And because he was prosperous, what happens is that he had built a life and a reputation for himself, and had become really wealthy and amassing people, army, and wealth in that regard. And all of a sudden, chapter 20 shows that Abraham leaves that land and goes off to live in another land with the Philistine, something like that. And in this case, the king of that region is Abimelech. And what he does with Abimelech is he says that Sarah now, is his sister. And Abimelech sent off people to take Sarah to sleep with him. But before he went on and slept with her, God appeared to him in a dream and told him that this is someone's wife, and if you try, you will be punished. And in the morning, Abimelech rose up, shares this information with his servants and his court, and then called up Abraham and said, "Why did you do this to me?" And in the same breath, sent him away with his wife and took gifts, men and servants, men servant and women servants, that and he restored Sarah. So if you recall, it is the same story that happened when Abraham left Ur and went to Egypt. But in that story, the Pharaoh in Egypt actually slept with Sarah. And in this case, it shows that it didn't happen. So this version is that when these stories are written in the Bible, there are different versions or different groups of scholars that and who have different affiliation and different perspective. And mostly the ones that are priests in the Judaic or tradition, they were not okay with the story of Sarah sleeping with the king of Egypt. So they rewrote the story to fit this narrative whereby Sarah did not actually sleep with Abimelech. And you can see that the story is it's the same story told differently with a different king. But you have to be critical of this information a little bit because it has been touched. And one of the things is that Sarah is 100 years old now. She's not that young, flamboyant, beautiful woman that came out of Ur with Abraham. They have already had a kid. The first kid of Abraham, that this is Ishmael, is now 14 years old, right? And it is really hard to believe that a whole king will fight over 100-year-old, I would say, woman that came with someone else, with their whole family, and they've amassed more wealth up to this point. It just doesn't make sense. So for that reason, we can just take this story and say, this does not really fit well. It's the same thing. We know the story and we know the version that has been slipped before, which means that we go to chapter 21. And in chapter 21, this becomes interesting because Sarah gives birth. A 100-year-old lady gives birth to a child called Isaac. And it is really something that makes Sarah very happy. And when you look at how this starts, it says, and the Lord visited Sarah, and he, as he has said, and the Lord did unto Sarah as he had spoken. He visited her, and shortly after that, she got pregnant, right? We'll keep that in mind. Now Sarah has this kid. It's Abraham's kid. And what she does in verse 10 of chapter 21, she says, and Sarah saw, that's 9, and Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abraham mocking. Wherefore she said unto Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son. She realized that, and this she did once the child is Isaac had grown and he was weaned off his mother's breast. So after she realized that her son was viable, she asked Abraham to send away the woman, which pained Abraham greatly. And it is not until the Lord God visits Abraham to let him know that he should not be feeling bad about this whole thing, that he has to send away his own son that he had known for 14 years because of this baby that was just born after being waiting for a long time. But he does it. But he does it with the intent that is questionable. And I will not get there before we say that when he sends them away, he just takes that the woman, the Egyptian woman, this is a black woman, and gave her a bottle of water. Huh? He rose up in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and gave it unto Hagar, putting it on her shoulder and the child, and sent her away, and she departed. This is someone that had amassed considerable wealth, and he is about to send away a woman and his child into the wilderness with just one bottle of water on the shoulder. It doesn't reflect the love of a father towards their son. But who am I? Men don't have the same bond as their mother have with the children. And so he sent her away, and in the midst of that, the water finished. And as the water finished, the child was very weak and was about to die. So she went and put the child somewhere and set against not wanting to see how the child will die. And as he was sitting there, She wept, and God heard the voice of the lad, of the child. It's the mother that was weeping, but God heard the voice of the child, and then went to Hagar, sent on an angel that went to Hagar and fortified her. Did some kind of magic there, where and God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled the bottle with water and gave the lad drink. There is a concept here that is very profound in terms of just our being as human. That water, that, the, the, the pond of water that was, the well of water that was there, it was there, but she could not see it with her physical eyes. And God opened her eyes for her to be able to see that well. It means that there is a universe that it's a concept of the parallel universe, right? And explained in a very rudimentary way, but it seems like it shows that there are other realms that are existing along with our realm, but we are just in a level of consciousness that we can tap to manifest this reality. But there is another reality that surrounds us that has more or less depending on what we want. And here, God has opened her eyes for her to be able to see that well and drink. I thought that was very interesting, especially early on in the history of the patriarchs. Now, she drank, and as the boy survived, and he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. Out of the land of Egypt. That is so, it's relevant in so many ways, because if this is, I'll say, a black woman has a tendency, by default wants his son to marry a black woman. That's the preference. It's not saying that you may be against marrying outside of your race and all that kind of thing, but it's interesting to see that Hagar went back to her roots, a tradition that she understood, to be able to pick a wife for his kid. There is another dimension to the understanding of this. It is not normal for a mother to pick a wife for their children, for their child, for their man, for their boy. But often, when the mother is put in a position where she plays the role of the mother and the father, it emboldens her position so much so that she has the tendency of recreating or choosing a wife for their child that is reflective of their own values or lack of values, if that is the case. And you can see that it has repercussions in the way next generations are built, because it seems like in the case of men it may be okay, but in the case of women it's very difficult, because we men tend to see and spot the BSs much quicker than women will do, and we spot them against ourselves. And a man that does not have the right intentions for your child, you will sense it as a man. But it seems like it's a little bit different if it is a woman. But in this case, Ishmael was a man and her mother took on that role of finding him a woman. And I think also that it may be a weakness that he had developed as a result of being raised by a single mother at this point. And it is not an easy space to navigate. And I think there is a space here to inquire more and find ways to mitigate whatever downfall that may result from that situation. Because also we can look in our community that that phenomena is very prevalent and it has its own repercussions. But I want to just go back to just from the time when Sarah got rid of of Hagar. It also highlights the level of competitiveness that women have against each other. And it's probably one of the things that make it very difficult to have a sustainable long-term and I'm gonna get some slack for this. I'll say multi-generational leadership in with women at it helm, because they hold grudges very for a long time. Because Ishmael, it's been 14 years, but she has not forgotten that Hagar mocked her when she got a kid and despised her because of it. And it was time for her to take her revenge, which she did. And it is also an inquiry for us to look at, although the woman is at the center of the constitution of African societies and our whole way of being, these things have certain ways of regulating themselves, or our ancestors had ways of regulating these things so that we can have many generations of communities that survive. Because we think men fight. Yes, we are very quick to fight because, you know, we finish it right there and then. And whoever wins, win, and it's physical between men and between men, right? But that option is not available mostly for women, whether it's men against women or women against women. And it's more settled. And when those attacks are acted upon and those intents, they hurt more than the physical fight that the men will have. Because now you see her revenge, her action is the cause of the potential death of Ishmael, who is not her son. And the intent was to eliminate that bloodline so that, you know, her son will be the legitimate heir to Abraham's massive wealth that, by the way, he accumulated from Egypt, where Ishmael's part of the family is from. And I've never thought of this that way before. But as I'm going through this, certain things are emerging, and you can see that it's not easy to tell which side is on your side and which side is not, including the divine entity that visited Sarah, after which she got pregnant. Because we have to remember that there had been a time when angels came to earth and they had children and intercourse with the women of the earth. Now, Let's say we just dive into that unconventional way of thinking, which could be considered as heresy, and change just one parameter. And this parameter would be, what if Abraham refused to chase away Hagar and said, I will stay with Hagar because I can't do. It's my son as much as this one is my son. And to be honest, he doesn't even know that it is his son, because there are a lot of visits that happen there that is not private to. And all of a sudden, the son is there. What if Abraham had gone so fond of Hagar and actually sent away Sarah? What if Abraham suspected that the child was not his and actually wanted to get rid of the child and just gave them one bottle of water without surviving scales? And what if the father of that child, seeing that the child will die, intervene and save the child? Another evidence to it is that in a lot of traditions, including African in certain ways, the child, you can only belong to that tradition through your affiliation with the mother, not the father, because we don't know really who is the father, but we know who is the mother. And if the mother is of that land, then we know that the mother is from there. What if after surviving, Sarah realized that there was a case to be made about Egyptians and Egyptian black women or black race that was very resilient, and went and find a wife for his son from the land where he had proof that they could procreate at will, or that's it, will. They have the a propensity, a predisposition to for procreation that is higher than any other race. And I think that is smart, but at the same time, it changes the paradigm of everything. Then you have to admit that not only all the descendants that come from Abraham thereof, or the story of Abraham, has in it an Egyptian, or I'll say a black or African component to it, when he continues his life uh, with with Hagar. And even if that level is questionable, the fact that Isaac marries an African woman shows also that wherever that story goes, there is an African component always tied to the Abrahamic descendants. And that pill is tough to swallow, and it means a lot of things that I really even know what to make of. But that's just changing one parameter. And we can do that. And it makes more sense than the linear story that is being tried to be cooked up over here. And that's the story of 21. Of course, in 21, there is a pop-up of Abimelech, who later on comes up to Abraham and make him swear not to attack him ever. And he says, I want to have a covenant between you and my descendant, you and I, my child, my children, and your children, and as well as their children after the children, to which Abraham agreed. And he dwelt in the Philistine land for many days. How many days? It's not said. Is it days? Is it years? We will see. But that's the gist of chapter 20 and 21 of Genesis. Our racial wealth gap seminar is going to be on the 6th of April. It's a Thursday at 7. The link is below. Register and we'll see you there. Thank you very much and talk to you there. Bye-bye.